Today on Hampton Roads Business Weekly, we take a look at the evolution of a product from an idea to the store shelves.
Plus, we have tips on growing a startup and finding ways to empower your employees. Hampton Roads Business Weekly starts right now. Hello and welcome to Hampton Roads Business Weekly, a look at the businesses and entrepreneurs making a difference in Hampton Roads. I'm Cheryl Tan.
And I'm Zach Miller. We begin today talking about podcast. Podcasts can be great for advertising your business and products to generating leads. So here are a few tips about podcast. We're here with Douglas Burdett, the founder and president of Artillery Marketing and also the host of the Marketing Book Podcast. Douglas, how's it going?
Good to be here.
So you've been in business for almost 2 decades doing marketing, advertising, stuff like
Almost
that.
30 years.
Almost 30 years, okay. So a lot has changed in that world, and now you've gotten in kind of the content marketing world, and you decided to get into a podcast.
Right.
How did that kind of come about?
Well, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, like even in the mid-2000s, where you would plug the podcast, the iPod into the computer. And I was always listening to those, and I love listening to marketing and sales podcasts. And I particularly enjoyed podcasts where authors were interviewed. And I just I loved listening to them, and I love reading marketing and sales books. And I one day went on GoDaddy, and marketingbookpodcast.com was available.
Wow!
And I took that as a sign from on high. So I decided to start the podcast, and so each week I publish an interview with the author of a new marketing or sales book.
What type of equipment is necessary to put a podcast on?
Not much, actually.
Yeah.
If you spend a lot of money on podcasting equipment, I would say you're probably not doing it right. It's really a medium where the quality is, it's really all about the quality, and it's not that difficult. It's a little bit tricky at first to figure the stuff out, but there are plenty of resources online that can show you how to start the podcast. But basically you need a microphone, a headset. A lot of the stuff is free. You need to have a hosting service, maybe $15 a month. So it's really, I would urge folks not to spend a lot of money to get started on starting a podcast.
So you produce the content, and I think this is where a lot of people go wrong, whether it's a blog post, a podcast, a video, whatever. They produce it, they upload it, it's there, and then they get nothing.
Right. And that's a good analogy for a lot of businesses where they think if they just have a good product or if they build it, they will come. But really, once you've uploaded that podcast to the service that gets it distributed to Stitcher and all the other places and iTunes, that's really the starting line. At that point, you have to promote it vigorously to get it found. I mean, iTunes is a search engine, but there are things that you can do to try to get more people to find it. So, like, for instance, getting reviews from your listeners, or getting, in my case, the guests to share it if they want to. Sometimes they'll share it, and that keeps the audience growing.
So
I do a
leveraging
blog
their
post.
network, basically.
Yeah, and I do a video review of the book, and I put it on Amazon because people who read reviews of marketing and sales books would probably like a podcast about marketing and sales books. I then do another blog post related to that on a much bigger website called B2B Marketing Insider. So it's just, you keep doing it's a game of inches where you keep doing more and more to try to get your content exposed to a wider audience.
So you're really leveraging other mediums that have big brands and then come in and take this concept that you have and leverage that to get to the next level. If someone was thinking about starting and doing this podcast, what would be maybe the top 3 things that you would tell them to do?
I would urge them to think about who their audience is. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to create a podcast for everyone. In other words, try to niche down and then niche some more. There's riches and niches. So mine is, there's other podcasts that are even more niche than mine. Like, I listen to podcasts for owners of marketing agencies, and they have a much smaller audience, but I'm listening to those. Also, think about what it is you're trying to accomplish from a business standpoint. I should also add that according to Libsyn, the most popular podcast hosting service, most podcasts never make it to episode 8.
Yeah, I saw that recently.
Yeah.
Is that because people just...
People give up. They haven't thought through about who their audience is and what they're trying to accomplish and what's involved in producing a podcast.
I've done 2 podcasts, 2 series of podcasts. My first one got to episode 7.
Oh, really?
The next one's at right now, I think 45. So I
So you made it. You broke through.
I made it.
All right, man.
I'm the 1%.
Yeah.
Douglas Burdett, appreciate your time. TheMarketingBookPodcast.com.
That's right.
And
No, marketingbookpodcast.com.
MarketingBookPodcast.com. Appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure.
With 35 years of business experience under his belt, Steve Waddell is working to bring a brand new product to market. Hear about his process coming up on HR Business Weekly. Once an engineer, always an engineer, and now a 2-time entrepreneur. We are thrilled today to talk with Steve Waddell, who is the founder and CEO of Nasoni. Steve, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me, Cheryl.
So you have a big full-time job as the Vice President of Reed Integration, and then you decided one day, I'm going to start another company. So I want to hear about this because I know it's taken up a lot of your time, a lot of your bandwidth. So talk about Nasoni with me, please.
Nasoni was born out of my own personal need of wanting to solve a challenge. And that is, when I brush my teeth, I hate sticking my head underneath the faucet. And I wanted a solution. I thought there had to be a better way. Yeah. And one of the things that we at Reed Integration do is we solve customer problems. So I'm always on the lookout for how to do improvement of anything, whether it's at home or at work.
You couldn't turn that engineering mind off.
Can't turn it off.
So what made you decide that this is a problem that you could solve in a bigger way that meant I'm going to create something new?
When I talk to people, I learned that everybody has this challenge. You either cup your hand, or you tilt your head, or you use a cup. Nothing is ideal, and I thought there has to be a better way.
So you created what? Show us what you've created, because you started, this is your finished product.
Correct.
But you started on a computer, didn't you?
Well, actually, I started by making a prototype of what I call a proof of concept. I took a fiberglass sink from Lowe's and a faucet. I took it outside, I hooked it up to a garden hose, and I drilled a hole in the top, shut off the downspout, and water came out the top, and it worked. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Now I need to come up with a way to engineer it. And that's when I had to turn to a tool like Fiverr and Upwork and find an engineer that had CAD modeling and fluid dynamics background that could help me do the engineering I needed.
Now, when you started Reed Integration with your wife Becky back in 2002, the tools were different. I mean, there are so many options now to get help. Have you found that to be the case?
Absolutely. These things didn't exist back then. The internet has exploded with things that entrepreneurs can really find beneficial.
Okay.
I've built what I call my human cloud product development pipeline, and I've had people from all over the world participate in bringing this to market. I've got an engineer in Thailand. I've got an attorney in India. I've got people doing videos in Ireland, and Brazil are doing my website stuff. So all over the world contributes, and that just wasn't possible before. And I can get people doing work at night while I'm asleep. And the next day I come in and it's done and it's ready for me. And the labor rates are cheaper. I can save money. Patent attorney in India is a lot cheaper than one here in the US. And I've actually developed a hybrid process where I get the initial work done by India and have somebody in the US clean it up for me to finalize it.
So you have this pitch down because you've been able to present it so many places. Talk about how you decided to use this as a way to get the word out about your business. And I'm talking about pitch competitions, some of which you've won.
Well, part of that has been out of necessity. In order to bring something to market like this, it takes a lot of funding, a lot of money. So while I've bootstrapped a lot of that out of pocket, I've also sought pitch contests to win to add to my funding needs. So, for instance, there was the competition 2 years ago called Get Started Hampton Roads, and it was held at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Virginia Beach. And they had a $10,000 prize, Judges Award prize, and they also had $250 American Express gift card for the Reader's Choice, and I won both. But all of that helps me bring the product to market.
Right.
So I've entered numerous contests and won most of them.
So what happens now, Steve? You're still in the middle of some competitions. You're still working on perfecting this model. What happens next for Nasoni?
We have finalized our design. There's a ton of excitement around it. Everybody loves it. It's very sexy and elegant. But what happens next is we have to do our tooling with the manufacturer, the factory, and then we do certification testing so that it can legally be sold in North America. Once that's done, we're building excitement along the way, gathering followers on Facebook and so on. And we'll be ready to launch in 2018. And so with all the excitement, we expect to get initial sales booming. And we have hotels and homeowners that all want this.
So how does it feel like being a startup again?
It's a lot of fun. Because, you know, when you have deliverables come from freelancers all over the world and you see it, it's almost like getting a new Easter egg. Because you're so excited about it, it's your product, and it's so much fun. You know, when I get this from the factory and I see something go from a 3D printed model and I see it come to reality, it's like your kid, you know, it's your child. It's what's been in your mind and your brain that you've wanted for years, that you've worked on, and you see it get real.
Well, congratulations, and we'll be watching your journey. Thank you so much for talking with us, Steve.
Thank you.
Owning one company is a lot to a lot of people, but what about multiple companies, and how do you do it? It's next on Hampton Roads Business Weekly. We're here with Michael Schwarting of Knockerball Hampton Roads and Regent alum. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
You own a lot of businesses. You're thinking about expanding and owning more. Do you wake up in the morning and think you're crazy to do that?
Sometimes.
I love it. So how many businesses do you currently own?
2 official. There's a startup in the works.
And so how do you understand, or how do you learn, you know, how much time do you give to each one?
Well, basically, I only invest time in other business ventures is when it's appropriate to do so. Mm-hmm. Today, it's so simple to generate leveraged income streams in a variety of ways. I mean, there's so many at-home businesses you can run today, or small businesses, sectors of business that you can quickly start up your own industry for what you're doing full-time, and now you're going to go out and freelance. So what I've done and what I am extremely passionate about is starting a business and getting it up and running to the speed where there's a leveraged income stream that doesn't require my direct time on it. And then basically, for lack of better words, just watching the numbers and making sure that that business is staying healthy and thriving.
So ramp it up, get a manager involved.
Exactly.
How do you find a manager that is appropriate for something like that? How do you teach
Well,
them?
there's a large trust factor there, especially when you're going to take your eyes off. So I think you know, whether you opt for a shadowing model where you can bring someone in and kind of educate them on how the business is working and to see if it is still a good fit. Because today in business, brand is so key. Mm-hmm. I can't run Knockerball and then have someone answering my phones that has the personality of a rock. It's important to understand when you're moving into different business ventures, well, how do we support and keep afloat and keep successful the businesses that we already have going, because we don't want that lost.
So how do you answer the phone?
Positively, enthusiastic.
Okay. Hi, I'm looking to talk to someone from Knockerball.
Hey, it's a great day at Knockerball Hampton Roads. How are you doing? What can we do for you?
Okay, so a lot of energy. Have you found that someone with that high energy can also be a manager? Or are they two separate people?
A majority of the time, my belief is that they're two separate people.
Okay.
So when it comes to management, I'm looking for a couple different characteristics. Someone who can look at numbers, they understand numbers, someone who knows how to keep our events running, someone who has foresight to look forward in the calendar and make sure we're lining up our staffing as needs, and they can bear some of the other character traits that a sanguine has, and they could still be high energy and be excited. But typically they have a little bit more organization.
From an overview perspective, like what does your dashboard look like to kind of jump into that business, even if you hadn't gone there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, I have access to everything, and that's key. You have to have that. Again, we said there's trust factor. But I also want to empower the people that work for us to run in their natural direction. And giving someone the ability to operate in an environment that they like, but not under enough constraints where their talent is actually diminished.
Well, I think that's where a lot of employers, entrepreneurs, do a bad job of hiring someone and then they're like, do these things. But then they don't allow them to do those things and then put their kind of flair behind it. So how can one person really empower someone to do what they're really good at?
Well, oftentimes as an entrepreneur, we need to kind of have a middle person. So like as the entrepreneur, and I think there's a couple answers to your question. One, I think the season of the business is important to understand too, because if we are at startup first year, maybe even second year, it's all forces to bear. Everybody's got to be lock, stock, and barrel on the same thing, right? And often in that season of a business, the entrepreneur can somewhat stifle the group, but hopefully they understand the vision enough that they're still motivated to get there. And then eventually when the company grows and revenue's there and we have success in a proven system, then people can really kind of emerge in their natural environments. But I think that it's very important for entrepreneurs, especially if it's your idea and your business, to have that person that really accents or gives balance to the areas that we're not necessarily successful in, so that they can kind of deliver the message and really get the people rolling in the right direction and make your business successful.
Yeah, so one of the best ways you've said is to ramp up the business, hire someone to kind of run it then, and then just to overview it and make sure that the things are in place and doing the things that you want, all while having trust in that person the whole time.
Sure.
Michael, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Transitioning from the military to being a contractor to being an entrepreneur. Hear more about this startup journey from Hillary Boyce Doriguzzi, the owner of Pro Hill Services. That's coming up. We're talking today with Hillary Boyce Doriguzzi, the CEO, the founder, the creator of Pro Hill Services. Hillary, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've been talking about your company as a startup. It's
Yes.
less than 2 years old, but you have 70 employees and you've had quite a bit of a learning curve over the last 2 years.
Yes, very much.
So I want to talk about why you decided to start this company and how you've been able to grow it so fast.
Okay, great. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind of excitement, fun, learning, challenges, successes. I'm prior Army, so I learned a lot from hard work in the Army. I got out of the Army in 2001, and I started my career as a contract employee, ground level, general clerk too, with hard work, ambition, ideas, working. I grew the ranks and got promoted. Learned a lot of the different aspects of growth, proposal, management, pricing, the whole customer service. Where my last position, I was pretty much number 2 in a company, and some new laws were passed in 2015 where women-owned companies in the government space can get a little priority placement for set-asides. And so I thought the time was right. It's time. So without much planning, I opened up my company a little bit less than 2 years ago. And I've been dealing with the challenges of things I've never done, of like being an owner, talking to the banks about capital, those things. The operations, the contracts, the mission, I knew that, so it's been fun.
So you offer professional services,
Yes.
mainly for the military. What does that mean?
Professional services means I'm not building things, I'm not doing construction or supplies. I actually provide great staff to augment the government's shortcomings of staff needs. So for example, I have hospice bereavement counselors supporting the Veterans Affairs. I have TRICARE clerks supporting different military bases. I have trainers, I have administration staff, logistics, language interpreters, so that kind of services. So all different military bases working on sites.
Now you have these services. How do you make
Yes.
the connections for those people to carry those out? How do you pull all that together?
Well, it's a lot. It's a lot of juggling balls. To win work in the line of work that we're doing with Department of Defense, you have to write proposals. Mm-hmm. So each time I write a proposal to respond to a government solicitation, I kind of pre-recruit to make sure I have a contingent ready. So if and when I win the contract, I'm ready to operate and execute and put them in the seat. So a lot of pre-recruiting for positions that may or might never come to light, but it's an important part that you have to do. Recruiting is part of this that you can't get around. You have to be a good recruiter.
So that one skill is something that maybe you picked up on the job
Yes.
somewhere that you've carried out into something that works for your company.
Yes, exactly.
What other skills have been important to your success?
I don't know if it's a skill or if it's just a necessity to focus on, but customer service, in this line of work, like I'm sure every line of work, if you don't do a good job for the first customer, the government has past performance, which is equivalent to a reference. And, if you don't do good for contract 1, your chances to get contract 2, 3, 4 aren't going to be there. So I focus on every one of my customers as if they're the only one. They don't know if there's 30 others. They don't know what other balls are going on that day. It's just everyone, I check in with them, how things going. I want to make sure they feel like they're getting exactly and more what they're required by the contract.
So you're talking about getting contracts, and you said you get them
Yes.
regularly, and now you're a prime on at least 30. That's
30.
not easy to do. I
No,
think
it's not.
In talking with other government contractors,
Right.
that is not easy. So what steps or maybe what help did you get to make that happen for yourself and for your company?
Well, proposals is a skill and an art that you have to do in the government. So, if you don't write proposals and don't know how to put them together that are compliant and compelling, you're not going to get contracts. So, that skill was something I learned along my journey of past experience. So, without having that, I wouldn't be able to have done this on my own. So that is there, and I have a great mentor. Another medium-sized government contract company, and I've met some great leaders throughout the military that I still look to as a mentor today, that have gave me great pep talks, great advice to kind of keep it going. And they were there whenever I said, I gave them a 10 o'clock p.m. call, says, thinking about opening up my own company, what do you think? And when the response is, it's about time, I guess that was meant to be.
That's when you sit up and listen.
Like, okay.
And you get to work.
You should have told me that a long time ago, but it's all good. Everything's worked out, and I'm very blessed, and it's been great.
Well, here's to another successful many years ahead for ProHail Services.
Thank you.
Hillary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And with that, we wrap up another edition of Hampton Roads Business Weekly.
Make sure you like us on Facebook and Twitter, and head over to hrbusinessweekly.com to get more information and watch previous shows.
For Hampton Roads Business Weekly, I'm Zach Miller.
And I'm Cheryl Tan. We'll see you next week.
Hampton Roads Business Weekly, sponsored by Regent University and produced by 13 News Now.